$1,500 each. My mom said, her voice sharp as winter wind cutting through our family kitchen. If you cannot afford it, stay behind. I nodded quietly, swallowing the bitter taste of exclusion, while my siblings exchanged excited glances about their upcoming Hawaii trip. Then, my phone buzzed with a credit card alert that made my blood freeze. 4 business-class tickets to Maui had just been purchased on my account. $12,000 charged in the span of minutes. My hands trembled as I opened the banking app, hit Dispute All, and locked the account immediately. Someone in my own family had just stolen from me. My name is Holden, and I work as a medical equipment sales representative here in Denver. At 28, I live in a modest one-bedroom apartment in the Highlands neighborhood. Nothing fancy, but clean and comfortable. I drive a reliable Honda Civic and maintain a careful budget that allows me to save while paying off student loans responsibly. My life follows a predictable routine of client visits, quarterly sales meetings, and weekend hikes in the Rockies. Simple, honest, stable. My family dynamics have always been complicated, though I never realized how toxic they truly were until that Thursday evening. My mother Margaret runs our household like a corporate boardroom, with spreadsheets tracking every expense, and family member ranked by their perceived contributions. She stands 5 feet 6 inches tall with steel gray hair, pulled into a perfect chignon, wearing designer suits, even for grocery shopping. Margaret treats love like a business transaction, dispensing approval only when it benefits her agenda. My older sister Sarah graduated summa cum laude from law school and now works as a junior partner at a prestigious firm downtown. She inherited Margaret's calculating nature, but wrapped it in polished professionalism. Sarah always wore her achievements like armor, reminding everyone of her billable hours and client victories. At 31, she lived in a penthouse loft and drove a black BMW, symbols of success that Margaret praised endlessly. Tyler, my younger brother, was 22 and finishing his senior year at Colorado State University. Unlike Sarah and me, Tyler possessed an easy charm that made people gravitate toward him. Margaret doted on Tyler because he reminded her of her younger self, full of potential and promise. He studied business management and planned to join Margaret in her real estate investment ventures after graduation. Then, there was my father David, a quiet man who worked as an electrical contractor for 30 years before retiring early. David stood 6 feet tall with calloused hands and kind eyes that seemed increasingly distant lately. He rarely participated in family discussions, preferring to retreat to his workshop in the garage, where he restored vintage motorcycles. Margaret often dismissed his opinions as irrelevant, since he no longer brought home a paycheck. The Hawaii vacation was supposedly Sarah's celebration for making junior partner. Margaret announced the trip during our monthly family dinner, presenting it like a gift she was generously bestowing upon us. The catch was that each person had to pay their own airfare, $1,500 for economy seats. Margaret made it clear that anyone unable to contribute would simply be left behind, no exceptions. I could afford the ticket technically. My quarterly sales bonus had just cleared, giving me enough cushion in my savings account. But something about Margaret's presentation felt wrong, like a test designed to exclude rather than include. The way she looked at me when announcing the price suggested she expected me to decline. Sitting in my apartment that evening staring at the fraudulent charges on my phone screen, I felt my world shifting underneath me. 4 first-class tickets to Maui, purchased at 7:43 p.m., just minutes after Margaret told me the trip would cost $1,500. The timing felt deliberate, calculated, like someone had been waiting for the perfect moment to strike. I called my credit card company, immediately speaking with a fraud specialist named Patricia, who guided me through the dispute process. She asked detailed questions about my recent transactions and whether I had given anyone access to my account information. The answer was absolutely not. I guarded my financial information carefully, having learned early that money security meant personal security. Patricia mentioned something that made my stomach drop. The person who made these purchases had used not just my credit card number, but my full social security number and billing address. This wasn't a random theft or data breach. Someone with intimate access to my personal information had deliberately targeted me. As I hung up the phone, my hands shaking with a combination of anger and betrayal, one terrible thought kept circling through my mind. The only people who had access to my social security number were family members who had helped me with various documents over the years. Someone I trusted completely had violated that trust in the most devastating way possible. The climactic realization hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't random crime. This was family. Friday morning arrived with gray clouds gathering over the Front Range Mountains, matching my mood perfectly. I had barely slept, my mind racing through possibilities and probabilities. Who had access to my information? How long had they been planning this? My phone rang at 8:15 a.m., startling me from my coffee and contemplation. The caller ID showed Dad, which was unusual since he rarely called during weekday mornings. "Holden, we need to talk." David's voice sounded strained, almost panicked. "I'm coming over." "Dad, what's going on? Is everything okay?" "Just please be there. I'll explain when I arrive." The line went dead, leaving me staring at my phone with growing dread. David never spoke in urgent tones or made mysterious announcements. He was the steady, predictable parent who fixed broken faucets and remembered birthdays without drama. 25 minutes later, my doorbell rang. I opened the door to find David looking haggard and exhausted, his usually neat appearance disheveled. His work shirt was wrinkled, his graying hair uncombed, and his hands trembled slightly as he stepped inside my apartment. "Dad, you look terrible. What happened?" David slumped onto my couch, burying his face in his hands. "I know about the credit card charges, Holden. Margaret told me what she did." The confirmation hit me like ice water. "So it was her." "She made me get your information." David's voice cracked with shame. 3 months ago, she said she needed your social security number and banking details for emergency purposes. She claimed that if something happened to you, the family needed access to help with bills or medical expenses. It sounded reasonable at the time. I felt my anger building hot and sharp in my chest. "Emergency purposes, Dad, she stole $12,000 from me." I know. David looked up with red-rimmed eyes. "She promised me she'd never actually use the information unless there was a genuine crisis. She said it was just responsible family planning." "Did you really believe that?" The words came out harsher than I intended, but I couldn't control my frustration anymore. David flinched at my tone. "Your mother can be very persuasive when she wants something. She made logical arguments about family financial security and responsible preparation. She even showed me articles about families who struggled because they couldn't access accounts during emergencies." I paced across my living room trying to process this betrayal. My own father had handed over my most sensitive information to someone who clearly planned to exploit it. "What else did she tell you?" "She said you owed the family money." David's admission came out barely above a whisper. "She claimed that since we co-signed your student loans, you had an obligation to contribute more to family expenses. She said the Hawaii trip was a way for you to pay back what you owed." This was news to me. "Dad, I've been making my loan payments faithfully for 3 years. I've never missed a payment." David's face went pale. "That's not what Margaret told me. She said you'd been defaulting on payments and damaging our credit rating as co-signers." I grabbed my laptop and logged into my student loan account, turning the screen toward David. The payment history showed 36 consecutive on-time payments, with my loan balance decreasing steadily. My credit score report showed 747, firmly in the excellent range. "Look at this, Dad. Every payment on time for 3 years straight." David stared at the screen with growing horror. "But Margaret showed me bank statements indicating missed payments. She said your credit score had dropped to the 500s. A chill ran down my spine. "She showed you fake documents." "I don't understand how this is possible." David rubbed his forehead. "She had official-looking papers with bank logos and everything." I spent the next hour showing David my legitimate financial records. My checking account showed automatic loan payments withdrawn every month like clockwork. My savings account showed steady growth from careful budgeting. My credit report confirmed excellent standing with all creditors. Dad, Margaret has been lying to you for months. She created a fake financial crisis to justify stealing from me. David looked older than his 58 years as the reality sank in. I should have verified her claims before giving her your information. I trusted her completely. There's something else you need to know, I said, dreading the question I had to ask. Did Margaret plan this timing specifically? David hesitated, then nodded slowly. She's been tracking your work schedule and bonus payments. She knew exactly when you'd receive your quarterly commission check. The final piece of the puzzle clicked into place. This wasn't impulsive theft, Dad. This was a coordinated plan. She researched credit card dispute procedures. David continued, his voice growing smaller. She found out that fraud investigations take 60 to 90 days to resolve. She figured she could take the family on vacation and deal with the consequences later. I felt physically sick. My own mother had researched the legal system to find the best way to steal from her son. She had calculated exactly how long she could use my money before facing any repercussions. She planned to spend my money, enjoy a luxury vacation, and then, what hope I'd just accept the theft. She said by the time you could do anything about it, the trip would be over, and the family would have had their deserved celebration. David's shame was palpable. She convinced herself that you owed this to the family. The climactic twist that shattered my remaining illusions came when David accidentally revealed something even more sinister. Margaret has been planning this since Christmas, he admitted. She's been researching your financial habits and saving patterns for months. She even knows about your emergency fund and retirement contributions. My blood ran cold. How could she possibly know about my private accounts? David looked confused. She said you gave her access during tax season to help with your returns. I had never given Margaret access to anything. I prepared my own taxes using online software and never shared any login credentials with family members. Someone had been monitoring my financial life without my knowledge or consent. The realization hit me like a sledgehammer. Margaret hadn't just stolen my money. She had been systematically spying on my finances for months, gathering intelligence to plan the perfect theft. This wasn't family financial planning. This was predatory behavior. Saturday morning brought no relief from the storm clouds gathering around my family. I sat at my kitchen table with coffee growing cold, surrounded by printouts of financial records and fraud documentation. The deeper I investigated Margaret's theft, the more disturbing patterns emerged. My phone buzzed with an incoming call from Sarah. I almost ignored it, knowing she'd likely been briefed on the situation by Margaret and was calling to minimize the damage. Holden, we need to discuss this credit card situation rationally. Sarah's voice carried her courtroom authority crisp and commanding. Mother explained what happened, and I think you're overreacting. Overreacting. I couldn't keep the disbelief out of my voice. Sarah, she stole $12,000 from me. She borrowed money from family for a family vacation, Sarah corrected with legal precision. There's a significant difference between theft and temporary family financial assistance. Temporary assistance. She used my social security number and personal information without permission. That's identity theft. Sarah sighed dramatically. Look, Holden, let's be honest about your contribution to this family. You've always been the one we've had to help and support. Remember when we co-signed your student loans? Remember all the times Mom and Dad bailed you out during college? This narrative felt completely foreign to me. Bailed me out, Sarah. I worked 2 jobs during college and graduated with minimal debt because of my scholarships and part-time work. That's not how I remember it. Sarah's tone turned condescending. You were constantly asking for money for textbooks, rent deposits, car repairs. The family invested heavily in your education and living expenses. I grabbed my college financial records from a filing cabinet, documents I'd kept for tax purposes. Sarah, My parents co-signed loans totaling $18,000. I paid for everything else through work-study programs, summer jobs, and academic scholarships. I have receipts showing I covered my own rent, food, and personal expenses. Well, regardless of the specifics, Sarah continued clearly, not interested in facts. This vacation is payback for all the support you've received over the years. Consider it a family debt being collected. Her callousness stunned me. So you knew about Margaret's plan? Of course I knew, Sarah said matter-of-factly. We coordinated the whole thing. Someone needed to teach you about family obligations and financial responsibility. The admission hit me like a physical blow. My sister, the lawyer who supposedly upheld justice and ethics, had actively participated in financial fraud against her own brother. Sarah, you're an officer of the court. You took an oath to uphold the law. How can you justify participating in identity theft? Don't lecture me about legal ethics. Holden, Sarah's voice turned icy. This is family business, not courtroom drama. Sometimes families need to take direct action to address long-standing issues. What long-standing issues? I've been financially independent for years. Your selfishness, Sarah stated bluntly. Your refusal to contribute meaningfully to family expenses. Your attitude that you don't owe the family anything despite all our investments in your success. I felt like I was arguing with a stranger. Sarah, I've offered to help with family expenses multiple times. Margaret always refused, saying she had everything handled. Offered to help with pocket change. Sarah scoffed. Meanwhile, you're building a savings account and living comfortably while your parents struggle with retirement expenses. This was completely untrue. David's electrical contracting business had provided excellent retirement savings, and Margaret managed several profitable rental properties. They were far from struggling financially. Sarah, our parents are financially stable. Margaret owns 3 rental properties that generate substantial monthly income. You clearly don't understand their real financial situation. Sarah dismissed my observation. But that's beside the point. The bottom line is that this vacation represents money owed to the family, and it's finally being collected. I ended the call realizing that rational discussion was impossible. Sarah had convinced herself that theft was justified, based on fictional debts and imaginary family obligations. An hour later, Tyler appeared at my door, looking genuinely distressed. Unlike Sarah's calculated coldness, Tyler's discomfort seemed authentic. Holden, I need to tell you something. Tyler's voice shook with nervousness. I did something terrible, and I can't live with the guilt anymore. I invited him inside, recognizing the expression of someone carrying a heavy secret. Last month, Margaret asked me to get your wallet for her. Tyler began, unable to make eye contact. She said she needed to verify your insurance information for some family financial planning she was doing. My stomach clenched. What did you actually do? I took your wallet while you were in the shower during our family barbecue. Tyler's confession tumbled out rapidly. I photographed every card document and piece of information inside. Margaret promised to pay me $1,500 for helping with her financial planning project. The betrayal stung, but Tyler's obvious remorse was different from Sarah's calculated justifications. Did you know what she really planned to do with that information? Absolutely not. Tyler's response was immediate and emphatic. She told me she was organizing family emergency contacts and financial information in case something happened to any of us. She made it sound responsible and caring. When did you realize the truth? Yesterday, when Dad told me about the credit card charges. Tyler looked miserable. I immediately understood that Margaret had used the information I stole to commit fraud against you. Tyler's willingness to admit his mistake and express genuine remorse gave me hope that not all my family relationships were irreparably damaged. There's more you need to know, Tyler continued. Margaret has been monitoring your phone and financial accounts for months. This revelation sent chills through me. How is that possible? Remember last year when we all switched to that family phone plan to save money, Tyler explained. Margaret has administrative access to all our accounts. She's been reading your text messages, monitoring your call history, and tracking your data usage. I grabbed my phone and checked the account settings. Sure enough, Margaret was listed as the primary account holder, with full access to all usage data and messaging records. She knows exactly when you receive payments from clients, when you make major purchases, even when you check your bank accounts. Tyler continued. She's been building a complete profile of your financial habits. The scope of Margaret's surveillance was staggering. She hadn't just planned a simple theft. She'd conducted months of reconnaissance to identify the perfect moment to strike. Tyler, what else did she know about my personal life? Tyler hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. She's been in contact with Amanda. Amanda was my ex-girlfriend, who had broken up with me 8 months ago, citing concerns about my financial stability and maturity. The breakup had devastated me, because Amanda's criticisms seemed to come from nowhere. What kind of contact? Margaret has been feeding Amanda information about your spending habits and financial decisions. Tyler's revelation felt like another punch to the gut. She told Amanda that you were hiding debt, making irresponsible purchases, and lying about your income. The pieces of my failed relationship suddenly clicked into place. Amanda's concerns about my financial stability weren't based on anything she'd observed directly. They came from Margaret's deliberate campaign of misinformation. Margaret sabotaged my relationship. She said Amanda wasn't good enough for our family and needed to be discouraged, Tyler explained. She wanted Amanda to break up with you before things got serious. I felt like I was discovering that my entire life had been orchestrated by someone else. Margaret hadn't just stolen my money. She'd been systematically undermining my relationship's career prospects and personal happiness for months. The climactic twist came when Tyler revealed the most shocking detail of all. Holden, Margaret isn't finished. Tyler's voice dropped to a whisper. She's been planning to forge your signature on mortgage documents. What mortgage documents? She wants to buy another rental property, but she needs additional income verification to qualify for the loan, Tyler explained. She's been researching how to use your salary as collateral for her real estate investment. The full scope of Margaret's scheme finally became clear. This wasn't just about stealing money for a vacation. Margaret had been planning to mortgage my entire financial future to fund her business ventures. She intended to make me financially responsible for her investments without my knowledge or consent, using forged documents and stolen personal information. If her real estate ventures failed, I would be legally obligated to cover the losses. Margaret wasn't just a thief. She was a predator who viewed her own son as nothing more than a financial resource to be exploited. Sunday evening brought a phone call that would reveal the true extent of Margaret's manipulative web. My aunt, Carol David's sister, who lived in Fort Collins, called with what she thought was good news. Holden, your cousin Jennifer is getting married next month, and we'd love to have you at the wedding. Carol's voice was warm, but cautious. Though I have to admit, I wasn't sure if you'd want to come, given your recent financial troubles. I almost dropped the phone. What financial troubles? Oh, honey, your mother told us all about your gambling problems and the debt you've accumulated. Carol's voice filled with sympathy. She said you've been asking the family for money constantly and making poor financial decisions. My world tilted again. Aunt Carol, I don't gamble, and I've never asked anyone for money. My finances are completely stable. The silence on the other end stretched uncomfortably long. But Margaret showed us bank statements and credit reports proving otherwise. She said you were too ashamed to admit the extent of your problems. She showed you fake documents. I said, my voice tight with controlled anger. Margaret has been lying to the entire family about my financial situation. That's impossible, Carol protested. Why would she lie about something so serious? I spent the next 30 minutes walking Carol through the truth, sharing my legitimate financial records via email, while we remained on the phone. Her shock was genuine, as she realized the extent of Margaret's deception. Holden, this means Margaret has been lying to all of us for months. Carol's voice was stunned. Your Uncle Bill has been worried sick about you, and your cousins have been contributing to a family fund to help with your supposed debts. The revelation that extended family had been donating money to help with fictional financial problems made me physically nauseous. Margaret had been collecting money from relatives under false pretenses, while simultaneously planning to steal from me directly. How much money has the family contributed to this fund? Nearly $4,000, Carol admitted. Everyone pitched in because we love you and wanted to help during your difficult time. Margaret had been running a con game on both sides, collecting sympathy donations from extended family, while planning to steal from me. The sophistication of her manipulation was staggering. There's something else you need to know, Carol continued. Margaret told us that your job was in jeopardy because of your financial instability. She said your employer was considering termination due to your personal problems affecting your work performance. This was completely false. My job performance had always been excellent with consistent sales numbers and positive client feedback. My recent promotion to senior sales representative proved my value to the company. Did she give you specific details about my supposed job problems? She said you'd been missing client meetings due to stress making errors on important contracts, and that your supervisor had put you on probation, Carol recounted. She seemed to have very detailed information about your work situation. A terrible suspicion began forming in my mind. Aunt Carol, did Margaret ever contact my workplace directly? She mentioned talking to your supervisor to express family concerns about your well-being. Carol confirmed my worst fears. Margaret had actually contacted my employer, potentially sabotaging my professional reputation with lies about my personal life. No wonder my recent promotion had been delayed, and my supervisor had seemed concerned about my home-life balance during recent meetings. Monday morning, I called my company's human resources department to investigate Margaret's interference. Speaking with Janet Miller, the HR director, I discovered that Margaret had indeed contacted the company 6 months ago. A woman claiming to be your mother called our main line, Janet explained. She expressed concerns about your financial stability and suggested that personal problems might be affecting your work performance. What specific claims did she make? She mentioned gambling debts, family financial strain, and emotional instability. Janet's professional tone couldn't hide her discomfort. She asked if the company had employee assistance programs for workers with financial difficulties. My stomach dropped. Did this conversation influence any employment decisions regarding my position? Janet hesitated. The call was noted in your personnel file, and it was considered when evaluating your recent promotion application. We delayed the promotion to monitor your performance more closely. Margaret's interference had directly impacted my career advancement. Her lies had cost me months of higher salary and professional growth opportunities. I need to clarify that every claim she made was completely false, I told Janet. I've never had gambling problems, financial instability, or any personal issues affecting my work performance. We'd like to schedule a meeting to discuss this situation, Janet said carefully. If a family member has been providing false information that influenced employment decisions, we need to address that immediately. That afternoon, Tyler came to my apartment with more devastating revelations. His guilt had motivated him to investigate Margaret's activities more thoroughly. I found something in Margaret's home office that you need to see. Tyler handed me photographs taken with his phone. She's been keeping detailed files on everyone in the family. The photos showed manila folders labeled with each family member's name. My folder was twice as thick as anyone else's, filled with financial documents, credit reports, employment information, and personal correspondence. Tyler, how did she obtain all this information? She's been intercepting your mail for over a year, Tyler revealed. She has duplicate keys to your apartment mailbox and has been photographing important documents before returning them. The violation felt overwhelming. Margaret had been systematically stealing my mail, documenting my financial life, and using that information to manipulate family relationships and sabotage my professional opportunities. There's more, Tyler continued. She's been recording phone conversations with family members and keeping transcripts of discussions about your personal life. Margaret had created a comprehensive surveillance operation focused on gathering intelligence about my life. The level of preparation and calculation was frightening in its thoroughness. Tyler, did you find any evidence of her mortgage plan? Tyler nodded grimly and showed me additional photos. Margaret had drafted loan applications listing my salary as collateral income. She'd researched property values in several Denver neighborhoods and calculated potential investment returns based on using my creditworthiness. She planned to buy 3 additional rental properties using your financial backing, Tyler explained. The total investment would have been over $200,000 with you legally responsible for all loan payments. The scope of Margaret's scheme was breathtaking. She hadn't been planning simple fraud. She'd been designing a complex financial trap that would have enslaved me to her business ventures for decades. How did she plan to execute this without my knowledge? She researched power of attorney documents and found ways to forge necessary signatures. Tyler's voice was barely audible. She even practiced copying your handwriting for months. I examined the photos, showing pages covered with practice signatures in Margaret's handwriting, gradually becoming more similar to my own signature style. The climactic revelation came when Tyler showed me the most disturbing discovery of all. Margaret has been planning to have you declared mentally incompetent. Tyler's words hit me like ice water. What does that mean? She researched legal procedures for obtaining guardianship over adult children who are supposedly unable to manage their own affairs, Tyler explained. She's been documenting fake evidence of your mental instability and financial irresponsibility. Margaret's ultimate goal was to gain legal control over my entire financial life. She wanted to become my legal guardian, giving her complete authority over my income savings investments and major life decisions. She consulted with lawyers about the process and learned that family testimony about mental health issues can be sufficient to initiate competency hearings. Tyler continued. Margaret hadn't just been stealing money or sabotaging relationships. She'd been planning to legally eliminate my autonomy and independence, turning me into her personal financial slave through the court system. Every disappointment in my recent life, every professional setback, every personal relationship failure traced back to Margaret's systematic campaign of manipulation and sabotage. She'd been orchestrating my isolation and vulnerability to set up the perfect conditions for complete financial control. The woman who gave birth to me had been treating me like a business asset to be acquired and exploited, rather than a human being deserving love and respect. Monday night, I contacted my old college roommate Jake Richardson, who now worked as a criminal defense attorney in downtown Denver. Jake specialized in white-collar crime and had helped several clients navigate complex fraud cases. Holden, what you're describing constitutes multiple federal felonies. Jake's voice was serious as I outlined Margaret's scheme. Identity theft, wire fraud, mail fraud, and conspiracy charges would be slam-dunk prosecutions with the evidence you've described. I need to know my legal options before confronting the family directly. Smart approach, Jake agreed. Let's meet tomorrow morning to document everything properly. Bring all your financial records, communication evidence, and Tyler's testimony. Tuesday morning, Jake's downtown office provided a professional environment for organizing my case. We spent 3 hours creating a comprehensive timeline of Margaret's crimes, supported by bank records, credit reports, phone records, and photographic evidence. The mail theft alone carries federal penalties of up to 5 years in prison, Jake explained while reviewing documents. Adding the financial fraud and identity theft could result in 15 to 20 years of federal incarceration. I want justice, but I also want to protect Tyler from serious consequences, I told Jake. He was manipulated into participating, and he's been cooperating fully with exposing the truth. Tyler's cooperation and genuine remorse will likely result in minimal charges, possibly just probation and community service, Jake assured me. Prosecutors appreciate witnesses who help build cases against primary conspirators. Jake helped me develop a strategy for gathering additional evidence while protecting myself from further manipulation. Since Margaret had been monitoring my communications, We needed to be careful about how we proceeded. We're going to use Margaret's own surveillance tactics against her, Jake explained. Colorado is a one-party consent state for recording conversations, which means you can legally record any discussion as long as you're participating. We planned a series of controlled interactions designed to elicit incriminating statements from Margaret and Sarah. The key was making them comfortable enough to admit their crimes while secretly documenting their confessions. First, we need to test whether Margaret is still monitoring your communications, Jake suggested. Send some obviously false information through channels she's been accessing and see if she responds to it. I created a fake text conversation with a fictional friend about receiving a large inheritance from a distant relative. Within hours, my banking app showed attempted login failures from an unrecognized IP address. Margaret was still actively trying to access my financial accounts, providing additional evidence of ongoing criminal activity. Perfect, Jake said when I reported the attempted intrusions. Now we know she's continuing to commit crimes in real time. That eliminates any defense about past mistakes or temporary lapses in judgment. Wednesday evening, I implemented the next phase of our plan. I called Margaret and adopted a defeated tone, suggesting I was ready to accept responsibility for the family vacation expenses. Mom, I've been thinking about our conversation, and I realize you're right about my family obligations, I said while recording the call. I want to apologize for overreacting about the credit card charges. Margaret's voice immediately became warmer and more confident. I'm glad you're finally understanding your responsibilities, Holden. The family has invested so much in your success over the years. I know, and I want to make things right, I continued. But I'm concerned about the credit card dispute I filed. How should I handle that? Just call them back and say it was a misunderstanding, Margaret instructed. Tell them you authorized the charges, but forgot about them temporarily. This statement provided clear evidence that Margaret knew the charges were fraudulent and was instructing me to lie to financial institutions. What about the bank's fraud investigation? Banks deal with false fraud claims all the time. Margaret dismissed my concern. Just stick to the story that you approved the vacation expenses as your contribution to family activities. Margaret was coaching me to commit additional crimes by making false statements to federal investigators. Her casual attitude proved this wasn't her first experience with financial manipulation. Thursday morning, Jake arranged a meeting with federal prosecutors to present our evidence. Assistant U.S. Attorney Rebecca Martinez specialized in financial crimes and immediately recognized the severity of Margaret's actions. This case involves sophisticated identity theft with clear intent to commit large-scale fraud, Martinez explained. The mortgage scheme alone would have constituted felony conspiracy to commit bank fraud. What's the timeline for prosecution? We can file charges immediately, Martinez said. The evidence is overwhelming, and the ongoing nature of the crimes creates urgency for intervention. Martinez explained that federal prosecutors typically offered plea agreements to primary conspirators, but Margaret's case involved so many separate crimes that significant prison time was virtually guaranteed. We're also investigating whether Margaret has committed similar crimes against other family members or individuals, Martinez added. Perpetrators who develop this level of sophistication rarely limit themselves to single victims. Friday afternoon brought the family meeting I had carefully orchestrated. I invited everyone to my apartment under the pretense of apologizing and discussing resolution options. Tyler agreed to participate in gathering evidence wearing a digital recorder Jake had provided. Margaret arrived dressed in her most expensive suit, clearly expecting a victory lap where I would formally surrender to her financial manipulation. Sarah accompanied her carrying legal documents she'd prepared to formalize my supposed financial obligations to the family. David came separately, still struggling with guilt about his role in providing my personal information. His cooperation would be crucial for building a complete case against Margaret. I want to start by acknowledging that I may have overreacted to the family vacation situation. I began following the script Jake and I had rehearsed. But I need to understand exactly what financial obligations I have to the family. Margaret smiled triumphantly. Finally, some maturity from you, Holden. The family has been supporting your lifestyle for years, and it's time for some reciprocity. Can you be specific about what support you're referring to? Your college expenses, loan, co-signing, career guidance, emotional support during difficult times. Margaret listed confidently. Conservative estimates put the family's investment in your success at over $50,000. This was completely fabricated. My college costs had been covered by scholarships, work-study programs, and minimal loans. Margaret was inventing debts to justify her theft. Sarah has prepared documents outlining your repayment schedule. Margaret continued, gesturing to the legal papers Sarah had brought. We think $3,000 monthly for 18 months would be reasonable. Sarah handed me professionally prepared contracts, requiring me to pay $54,000 to the family over the next year and a half. The documents included clauses giving Margaret access to my bank accounts to ensure timely payments. This seems like a lot of money, I said, still following our script. How did you calculate these specific amounts? We documented every expense the family incurred on your behalf. Sarah explained with legal precision. Educational costs, living expenses, transportation, medical bills, and opportunity costs from family members spending time helping you succeed. The opportunity costs section was particularly creative, charging me for family members' time spent attending my graduation ceremonies, birthday celebrations, and holiday gatherings. What if I can't afford these monthly payments? Then, we'll need to explore alternative arrangements, Margaret said with calculated coldness. Perhaps a mortgage on your apartment or access to your retirement accounts could provide necessary funds. Margaret was openly discussing additional financial crimes while being recorded. Her confidence in her ability to manipulate me had made her careless about admitting criminal intent. The climactic moment came when I asked about the specific timeline for these supposed family debts. When exactly did the family begin tracking these expenses? Margaret paused clearly, trying to calculate a believable time frame. We've been keeping informal records for several years, but we began formal documentation about 6 months ago, when we realized your selfishness was becoming problematic. 6 months ago was precisely when Tyler had first noticed Margaret paying unusual attention to family financial discussions. It was also when Margaret had begun her surveillance of my accounts and mail theft. So these debts weren't calculated until recently. We finally decided to quantify your obligations when it became clear you weren't voluntarily contributing your fair share, Sarah added. Tyler asked the question that provided our most damning evidence. Mom, how did you know Holden could afford these payments? Margaret's answer was delivered with casual pride. I've been monitoring his financial accounts for months to ensure he has adequate resources. I know exactly what he earns, spends, and saves. The admission of financial surveillance was captured clearly on our recording devices. Margaret had just confessed to multiple federal crimes while describing her actions as responsible family planning. I even researched the timing of his quarterly bonuses to ensure optimal payment scheduling. Margaret continued, completely unaware that she was providing prosecutors with perfect evidence of premeditation. The meeting continued for another hour, with Margaret and Sarah providing detailed confessions about their surveillance manipulation and theft. They described their activities with such casual confidence that they never suspected they were documenting their own crimes. When they finally left my apartment, Jake and I had recorded over 2 hours of incriminating statements that would make prosecution inevitable and conviction virtually guaranteed. Margaret's arrogance had become her downfall. Her assumption that she had successfully broken my spirit had made her careless about concealing her criminal activities. Monday morning arrived with the weight of inevitability. Jake had spent the weekend coordinating with federal prosecutors, and arrest warrants had been prepared based on our recorded evidence and financial documentation. Everything happens today, Jake told me over breakfast at a downtown cafe. FBI agents will execute the warrants this morning, and Margaret will be arrested at her real estate office around 10 a.m. My stomach churned with a mixture of anxiety and anticipation. Despite everything Margaret had done, The reality of my mother being arrested felt surreal and emotionally complex. "Are you ready for the family fallout?" Jake asked gently. "I've lost my family already," I replied. Margaret destroyed those relationships when she chose financial manipulation over genuine love. At precisely 10:15 a.m., my phone rang with a call from David. "Holden, your mother has been arrested at her office." David's voice was shaken and confused. FBI agents came with handcuffs and everything. Her co-workers saw the whole thing. Margaret's public arrest at her prestigious real estate firm would destroy the professional reputation she valued above all else. The image of being escorted from her office in handcuffs would be the ultimate humiliation for someone who built her identity on appearing successful and in control. What were the charges? Identity theft, wire fraud, mail fraud, and conspiracy. David recited from official documents. "Holden, did you really have her arrested?" "I protected myself from criminal activity," I corrected. Margaret chose to commit felonies against her own son. David's silence stretched uncomfortably. I could hear him processing the reality that his wife faced serious federal prison time for crimes against their child. "The FBI is requesting interviews with family members," David continued. "They want to speak with Tyler and me about our knowledge of Margaret's activities." "Dad, you need to tell them the truth completely. Your cooperation will help minimize your legal exposure." "I never intended for any of this to happen." David's voice cracked with emotion. "I know, Dad. Margaret manipulated all of us." An hour later, Tyler called with updates from his FBI interview. "They were very professional and understanding," he reported. "Agent Stevens said my cooperation and genuine remorse would likely result in minimal charges." Tyler's honesty about his role in stealing my wallet information had impressed investigators. His willingness to expose Margaret's broader criminal scheme demonstrated that he understood the seriousness of the situation. "What did you tell them about Sarah's involvement?" "Everything," Tyler said firmly. "I showed them the text messages where Sarah helped coordinate the credit card theft and plan the family meeting where they tried to extort money from you." Sarah's arrest came Tuesday afternoon while she was meeting with clients at her law firm. Unlike Margaret's shock and outrage, Sarah immediately requested legal representation and refused to make any statements without her attorney present. "Sarah's legal training probably saved her from making incriminating statements," Jake explained. "But we have recorded evidence of her active participation in the conspiracy." Sarah's law firm immediately placed her on administrative leave pending the outcome of criminal proceedings. The State Bar Association opened an ethics investigation that would likely result in professional discipline, regardless of criminal conviction outcomes. Wednesday brought a call from my employer requesting a meeting about Margaret's previous contact with the company. Janet Miller from Human Resources had reviewed Margaret's initial communication and wanted to address the employment impact. "Your performance reviews and sales numbers clearly demonstrate that your mother's claims were completely false," Janet explained during our meeting. "We're embarrassed that we allowed external misinformation to influence internal employment decisions." "What does this mean for my position here?" "Immediate promotion to regional sales manager with a 30% salary increase," Janet announced. "We're also providing a formal letter for your personnel file clarifying that previous promotion delays were based on false information." My employer's response exceeded my expectations. Instead of simply correcting past mistakes, they were actively demonstrating confidence in my abilities and potential. Additionally, we're implementing new policies to prevent family members from influencing employment decisions through unsolicited contact, Janet continued. "Your situation helped us recognize a significant vulnerability in our human resources procedures." Thursday afternoon brought the most emotionally complex development. David appeared at my apartment carrying 2 suitcases and looking exhausted. "I've filed for divorce," he announced quietly. "I can't continue living with someone who committed crimes against our son." David's decision represented a fundamental shift in family dynamics. For 32 years, he had enabled Margaret's controlling behavior, by remaining passive and avoiding confrontation. His choice to finally take a stand felt both overdue and courageous. "Where will you stay?" "Tyler found me a furnished apartment near his campus," David explained. "I'm selling the house to pay restitution for your financial losses and legal expenses." David's willingness to sacrifice his comfortable lifestyle to make amends demonstrated genuine remorse for his role in enabling Margaret's crimes. "Dad, I don't expect you to impoverish yourself to fix Margaret's mistakes." "You're my son," David said simply. "I failed to protect you from your mother's manipulation, and now I need to do everything possible to make things right." Friday brought news of Margaret's initial court appearance. Jake attended the hearing and reported that federal prosecutors had recommended denial of bail based on Margaret's sophisticated planning and ongoing criminal activity. The judge agreed that Margaret represents a continued threat to commit financial crimes, Jake explained. "She's being held at the federal detention center until trial." Margaret's detention would prevent her from continuing surveillance or harassment during the legal proceedings. More importantly, it would give the family time to heal without her manipulative interference. "What's the timeline for resolution?" "Margaret's attorney is discussing plea agreement options with prosecutors," Jake said. "Given the overwhelming evidence and recorded confessions, a guilty plea is virtually inevitable." "What kind of sentence is she looking at?" "Federal sentencing guidelines suggest 15 to 20 years for the combined charges," Jake explained. "Her lack of criminal history might reduce that somewhat, but the sophistication and duration of her crimes work against leniency." Margaret faced the possibility of spending her remaining healthy years in federal prison. The vacation she'd planned to steal $12,000 to afford would cost her decades of freedom. The climactic resolution came when Tyler discovered Margaret's final planned manipulation. While cleaning out Margaret's home office to prepare the house for sale, Tyler found documents revealing her most shocking scheme yet. "Margaret was planning to have you declared mentally incompetent next month," Tyler revealed, showing me official court forms she'd begun preparing. She'd scheduled meetings with doctors to provide testimony about your supposed psychological problems. Margaret had researched legal procedures for obtaining guardianship over adult children deemed unable to manage their own affairs. Her plan involved presenting fabricated evidence of my mental instability to gain complete control over my financial life. She'd lined up 3 family friends to testify about your erratic behavior and poor decision-making. Tyler continued. People who barely knew you were prepared to lie under oath based on Margaret's manipulation. The guardianship scheme would have legally eliminated my independence and autonomy. Margaret would have gained authority to control my income-spending living arrangements and major life decisions. How close was she to implementing this plan? The court hearing was scheduled for next month, Tyler said grimly. If you hadn't discovered the credit card fraud when you did, she might have succeeded in having you declared incompetent before you could defend yourself. Margaret's ultimate goal had been total control over my life through legal manipulation of the mental health system. Her theft of vacation money was just the beginning of a comprehensive plan to eliminate my personal freedom entirely. The realization that I had narrowly escaped legal enslavement by my own mother was both terrifying and liberating. Margaret's arrest had prevented a scheme that would have been nearly impossible to reverse once implemented. 6 months later, I sat in federal district court, watching Margaret accept a plea agreement that would send her to prison for 18 years. The woman who had systematically manipulated and stolen from her own family stood in an orange jumpsuit, finally facing consequences for her actions. The defendant's crimes demonstrate a level of planning and callousness that demands significant punishment, Judge Patricia Coleman stated during sentencing. Using one's position as a parent to financially exploit and manipulate a child represents a profound betrayal of trust. Margaret showed no remorse during the proceedings, maintaining her belief that she had been justified in collecting what the family supposedly owed her. Even facing decades in prison, she refused to acknowledge the pain and damage her actions had caused. Sarah received a sentence of 3 years in federal prison plus 5 years supervised probation. The State Bar Association suspended her law license indefinitely, effectively ending her legal career. Her cooperation with prosecutors in documenting Margaret's crimes had reduced her sentence somewhat, but her active participation in the conspiracy ensured serious consequences. "Justice has been served," Jake said as we left the courthouse. "Margaret will spend most of her remaining healthy years in federal prison, and she's required to pay full restitution for all financial damages." The restitution order totaled $47,000, covering stolen money credit repair costs, lost wages from employment interference, and legal expenses. David's sale of the family home provided funds for immediate payment. 3 months after the sentencing, my life had transformed in ways I never expected. The promotion to regional sales manager came with challenging responsibilities and substantial income growth. My territory covered 4 western states, requiring frequent travel, but offering unlimited earning potential. "Your experience with financial fraud gives you unique credibility with our medical practice clients," my supervisor explained. "Doctors appreciate working with someone who understands identity theft and financial security issues firsthand." My personal experience with financial manipulation had become professional expertise that enhanced my sales effectiveness. Clients trusted my advice about protecting their practices from fraud because I had survived sophisticated financial crimes personally. More importantly, I had met Emma Rodriguez, a financial fraud counselor, who worked with the Victim Services Division of the U.S. Attorney's Office. Emma had been assigned to help me navigate the emotional recovery process after Margaret's conviction. Financial abuse by family members creates unique psychological challenges, Emma explained during one of our sessions. Victims often struggle with guilt, self-doubt, and difficulty trusting their own judgment about relationships. Emma's professional expertise in trauma recovery complemented her personal warmth and understanding. Our working relationship gradually evolved into friendship, then romantic connection, based on mutual respect and shared experiences with overcoming difficult circumstances. "You've developed remarkably healthy boundaries considering what you survived," Emma told me during a hiking trip in Rocky Mountain National Park. "Most victims of family financial abuse struggle for years to establish independence and self-confidence." Our relationship felt completely different from my previous romantic experiences. Emma appreciated my cautious approach to trust and understood my need for transparency in all financial matters. She encouraged my healing process without trying to rush or manipulate my emotional recovery. Tyler had transferred to University of Colorado Denver to be closer to David and me. His experience with Margaret's manipulation had motivated him to change his major from business to social work, focusing on family therapy and financial abuse counseling. "I want to help families recognize and escape manipulation before it escalates to criminal behavior," Tyler explained. "What Margaret did to our family happens more often than people realize." Tyler's transformation from unwitting accomplice to advocate for abuse survivors demonstrated genuine growth and accountability. His decision to dedicate his career to helping others showed that he had learned profound lessons from his mistakes. David had surprised everyone by thriving after his divorce from Margaret. Free from her constant criticism and control, he rediscovered interests and friendships that had been suppressed for decades. "I spent 30 years walking on eggshells around your mother," David told me during one of our regular breakfast meetings. "I forgot what it felt like to make decisions without fear of her disapproval." David had joined a motorcycle restoration club and begun dating a kind woman named Linda, who shared his interests in craftsmanship and outdoor activities. At 58, he was learning to build relationships based on mutual enjoyment rather than obligation and manipulation. "Linda treats me like an equal partner," David explained. "Margaret always made me feel like an employee who could be fired for inadequate performance." Our family relationship was healing slowly but steadily. David attended regular therapy sessions to understand his role in enabling Margaret's abusive behavior. He was learning to recognize manipulation tactics and develop healthier communication skills. I should have protected you from your mother's manipulation years ago, David acknowledged. I was afraid of confrontation, so I chose peace over protecting my son. David's willingness to take accountability for past mistakes while working to build better relationships demonstrated that genuine change was possible with effort and commitment. My new career included consulting work with other financial fraud victims, helping them navigate legal procedures and emotional recovery. The experience I had gained from surviving Margaret's manipulation became valuable expertise that could help others seek justice. Your story gives other victims hope that they can fight back and win, Emma told me. Seeing someone who survived systematic family financial abuse and built a successful independent life provides inspiration for people who feel trapped. I had established a foundation that provided legal assistance to victims of family financial abuse, particularly adult children whose parents had exploited their trust and personal information for financial gain. The foundation's success demonstrated that my painful experience could be transformed into meaningful help for others. 2 years after Margaret's conviction, I received a letter from another victim of family financial manipulation. Jennifer, a 26-year-old woman from Oregon, had read about my case online and found courage to report her father's identity theft and financial exploitation. Your story showed me that fighting back was possible, Jennifer wrote. I thought I had to accept my family's financial abuse because they were my parents. Learning about your experience gave me strength to seek justice. Jennifer's case had resulted in her father's arrest and conviction for similar crimes. Her letter reminded me that surviving Margaret's manipulation and seeking justice had created ripple effects that helped other victims find their own courage to fight back. The most profound lesson I learned was that genuine family relationships require mutual respect, honesty, and support. Margaret's version of family was built on obligation manipulation and exploitation disguised as love. Real family members want each other to succeed and thrive independently, Emma observed. They don't view each other as resources to be exploited or controlled. True family relationships enhance personal growth and autonomy rather than undermining independence. Healthy families celebrate individual achievements and provide support during difficulties without expecting unreasonable compensation or control in return. Margaret's crimes had destroyed the family structure I had known since childhood, but they had also created opportunities to build better relationships based on honesty and mutual respect. The pain of her betrayal had been profound, but the growth and healing that followed were equally transformative. I learned that protecting yourself from manipulation and abuse isn't selfish. It's necessary for building authentic relationships and personal integrity. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for family members is to refuse to enable their harmful behavior by accepting it. Looking back, I realized that Margaret's arrest probably saved not only my financial future, but also my emotional health and personal autonomy. Her plan to have me declared mentally incompetent would have been devastating and nearly impossible to reverse. Standing up to family manipulation required courage I didn't know I possessed, but the results proved that justice and healing were possible, even in the most painful circumstances. The family I lost through Margaret's crimes was replaced by stronger, healthier relationships built on genuine care and respect. My experience taught me that financial security isn't just about money. It's about protecting your independence and autonomy from people who would exploit your trust for their own benefit. Learning to recognize and resist manipulation became one of the most valuable skills I ever developed. Today, I live in a spacious house in the foothills west of Denver, sharing my life with Emma and our golden retriever named Justice. My career continues to grow. My relationships are based on honesty and mutual respect, and my financial security is protected by strong boundaries and careful vigilance. Margaret remains in federal prison, still maintaining that she was justified in stealing from her son. Her letters to Tyler and David continue to blame everyone else for her choices and consequences. Some people never learn to take accountability for their actions. But her inability to change doesn't diminish the healing and growth that everyone else has achieved. Tyler, David, and I have built new family traditions based on genuine affection rather than obligation. Emma has become part of our chosen family, bringing joy and wisdom to our relationships. The vacation Margaret stole $12,000 to afford lasted 1 week. The prison sentence she received for that theft will last 18 years. The family relationships she destroyed through her manipulation can never be repaired. Sometimes the cost of betrayal is far higher than people realize when they choose immediate gratification over long-term relationships. Margaret's story serves as a warning about what happens when people view family members as resources to exploit, rather than people to love and respect. My story, however, demonstrates that even the worst family betrayal can be overcome with courage, legal justice, and commitment to building healthier relationships. Surviving Margaret's manipulation made me stronger, wiser, and more capable of recognizing genuine love and respect. Have you ever faced financial manipulation or betrayal from someone you trusted? How did you find the strength to protect yourself and seek justice? I'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Thank you for listening to my story and supporting others who might be struggling with similar situations. If you found this helpful, please like this video, subscribe for more stories about overcoming difficult family situations, and share this with anyone who might benefit from hearing about recovery and healing after betrayal. Remember that protecting yourself from manipulation isn't selfish. It's necessary for building authentic relationships and maintaining your personal integrity. Justice and healing are possible even when the people who hurt you are family members. Stay strong, trust your instincts, and never let anyone convince you that you deserve to be exploited or abused.